Hey everyone, Michael here today. Hope all is well. So, what if I told you that you have the ability to regenerate your body and heal any injury through electrical currents? So, instead of the body just being a bag of skin meant to house a bunch of chemical reactions like what you've been taught in a lot of your high school classes, what if your body was actually a dynamic bioelectric system that can actually heal and respond to electricity, much like a circuit board and electronic device? Well, that's actually what I want to explore today, and this is what Dr. Robert Becker uncovered in his 1970s research into the use of electricity to heal and regenerate physical tissue. So, in today's video, I want to talk about how mainstream medicine has completely covered up what could have been the biggest medical breakthrough in the last century, and how the field of electromedicine could disrupt and reinvent how people recover from illness, injury, and any form of inflammation without having to cut people open or inject crazy toxic pharmaceuticals that we know we all love, right? Before I go into Robert Becker and his research, I want to share a quick personal story about a friend of mine. He was very big on riding motorcycles. And what happened is that one day, as he was riding his motorcycle, he almost crashed to a truck. And right before he was about to crash into it, he basically did a crazy maneuver where he turned his motorcycle sideways before colliding into the truck itself. And luckily, he did survive. However, what happens is his leg was completely mangled and absolutely wrecked. So he was taken to the hospital. And when he talked to the doctors, they basically told him that his leg was so badly injured beyond repair to the point that they're likely going to have to cut it off and amputate it. So this is a complete nightmare situation. So at this point, my friend's freaking out. He's praying to God, please God, don't take my leg away, yada, yada, yada. You get the gist of it, right? So a few days later, he goes back to the hospital. He's talked to a nurse, and nurse feels really sorry for him. So he basically gives him the phone number to a local holistic health practitioner who specializes in using electromedicine devices. So my friend, he reaches out to this individual. What happens is that the doctor or this holistic health practitioner connects two electrodes to his injured leg and runs electrical currents through his body. And after about a week of doing this treatment, he's actually back on his feet, running on the beach in a healthy fashion, which is absolutely insane to me. Because when I first heard the story in my mind, I'm personally thinking about why the heck have we not heard about this? Why is the mainstream media, why is the medical establishment not talking about this or even bring this up as a potential option for people who are seriously injured? That's what I want to talk about. And that leads me into the work and research of Dr. Robert Becker, who was one of the leading orthopedic surgeons and doctors who pioneered this field of regenerative medicine. So Robert Becker, I believe he was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize probably on two different occasions just for his work in regenerative medicine. And he took a lot of inspiration from some of the 18th and 19th century scientists, specifically from the embryologist Thomas Hunt Morgan, with a study into salamanders and their ability to regenerate limbs after being amputated. What Morgan discovered is that whenever you would cut off a limb on a salamander, a mass of embryo-like stem cells would actually form around the stump where the limb got severed off, and then the limb would slowly start to regenerate with new bone, new skin, new cartilage, etc. So you started asking the question, why are salamanders able to do this while other mammals and humans cannot do so, right? And so Dr. Becker, he continued to research into this. He took a lot of inspiration from the Russian researcher named Sinyukin, who measured electric potentials on damaged and injured plants. And what he found was that whenever he would measure electric potentials around an injured plant, he would always measure a negative potential around the injury site. He also observed a similar phenomenon on most normal animals. So, what he hypothesized was that whenever an animal or an entity or living system gets injured, it redirects its bioelectric energy towards the site of injury so that the body has, so the local cells have enough energy to regenerate and heal. So, to me, when I heard this, I thought this was really mind blowing. This is the complete opposite what you're taught in most schools, where everything inside the body is chemically driven as opposed to being electrically driven. And so, in the case of the Russian researcher Sinyukin, he actually took this a step further and actually connected these injured plants to a battery so they could run a current across the injury. What he noticed is that the injury recovered and healed at a much quicker rate upon exposure to an actual battery and electric current. So Robert Becker took a lot of inspiration from this. He took this a step even further by doing experiments on frogs, where he would amputate the frogs, chop off their limbs, and then he would connect the injured site to a battery or set of electrodes. And upon doing so, upon exposure to electric current, the frog's limbs would slowly begin to regenerate and grow new bone, which is insane. And Dr. Becker was even able to replicate this phenomenon even in amputated dogs as well too. So the reason why this type of treatment actually works is because exposing an injured or damaged tissues to an electrical current allows for what's called dedifferentiation of the local cells. And I know this kind of gets sciencey, and I'm not the smartest guy around, but I'm going to try to explain this myself in the simplest way possible. But basically, when you have a baby's embryo and it's starting to develop the rest of its body, the stem cells inside the embryo at the beginning are undifferentiated, meaning that the cells can adopt any type of form, any type of function because they have the ultimate level of flexibility. Whereas on the other hand, as the cells begin to differentiate, they become more specialized for specific functions. In a fully developed human body or a fully developed animal, all the cells are generally differentiated or specialized. But upon exposure to a negative current, the local cells can actually de-differentiate to where it can transform and fulfill any function necessary. So you have to have cell de-differentiation in order to be able to regenerate lost limbs or lost organs, etc. So Dr. Becker made groundbreaking progress in his regeneration research and proved without a doubt that electrical currents can speed up the recovery time at the very most, if not entirely regenerate the lost bone or limb. In about the year 1970, I think Becker was actually able to put this protocol to the test when he had an injured patient who broke both of his legs. And one of his legs would not heal no matter what. No matter how long he would keep the leg in the cast, the bone would just not fuse or mend together for whatever reason. So at this point, the patient's freaking out and he's at major risk of having to be amputated and have the leg cut off entirely, which is, again, another nightmare scenario. So as a last resort, what Dr. Becker did was that he actually connected several electrodes to the broken leg underneath the cast and ran electrical currents through the leg for several weeks. And at this point, Dr. Beck did not exactly have high expectations, but upon removing the cast, he noticed that there was a lot of new bone growth and the injured, fractured fragments of the leg actually fused and mended together to everyone's surprise. So that was a massive breakthrough because Becker was able to prove without a doubt that electrical currents can accelerate the healing of bone breaks and fractures, as well as mend bones together that will not fuse together on their own. When he discovered this, he did further research and also discovered that he was about 150 years late to the party, where back in 1812, there was a British doctor named John Birch who used electric shocks to heal a fractured tibia in a patient successfully. And it turns out this type of treatment was actually used very actively back in the 19th century, but was somehow lost and forgotten because I suppose that scientists probably did not understand how it worked. And because they did not understand how it worked, they could not defend it in their practices until the practice eventually forgotten, left behind. So with this research, Becker was able to come really, really close to figure out how to regenerate human limbs, especially for individuals who may have had their limbs lost in accidents or in war for veterans. And right before he was able to achieve this major breakthrough, his research and funding got completely shut down. But the question is why? What happened is that Robert Becker, he actually blew the whistle on the hazards of EMF radiation against the approval of the local government and the corporations. And during this time, large corporations and governments were trying to build all kinds of cell phone towers, which is going to expose the public to all kinds of crazy artificial EMFs and hazards. And the government did not like the fact that Becker was speaking out against this. So at this point, they decided to cut off his funding and force him into an early retirement, which is a massive, massive shame. Because how many people do you think could have benefited from this, right? So the medical establishment is heavily, heavily dependent on toxic pharmaceuticals, hyper-invasive surgeries, and this basically amounts to what I like to call the Microsoft-style business model of creating solutions that creates more problems that then require you to pay for more solutions later down the line, right? This sounds familiar, right? So electromedicine treatments like microcurrent therapy pose a massive threat to big pharma because after all, who wants to pay for injecting toxic pharmaceuticals and chemicals into your body or doing highly invasive surgeries when you can actually kill most inflammation, injury, and illness using electrotherapy? You also have to take into account that in today's world, we're all bathed in really dangerous EMFs on a chronic basis where we're being cooked 24/7 by things like 5G towers, Wi-Fi routers, cell phones. There really is no escape in the modern day. So what can you do today to improve and protect your health by embracing the bioelectric nature of your body? So the first thing I would recommend is to do whatever you can to avoid unnecessary EMF radiation when necessary. For example, it's probably a good idea for you to turn off your Wi-Fi router at night when you go to bed, or even ditch your Wi-Fi router and opt for using Ethernet cable connection directly to your computer. One thing I also like to do is I like to set my phone to airplane mode when I walk around in public with the phone in my pocket. You can also opt to use EMF blocking materials like shungite, which is a proven mineral crystal that absorbs EMF radiation safely. EMF blocking blankets and curtains could also be useful in blocking broader level radiation coming from towers nearby. And the last thing I want to recommend is if you're either injured, sick, or ill, I might recommend that you explore the world of using microcurrent therapy devices, as those could be very powerful. Now, some on the market are legit, but some may not be. I personally recommend using acuscopes, equiscopes, as they're known for being reliable and good quality. However, they are super expensive to buy on your own, so you may want to consider renting them out from a local technician nearby if you have one. So anyway, that's all I have for today's video, guys. I hope you found that useful and hope you enjoy your day. Take care, everyone.